It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Spain's players. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and today we'll be looking at Spain's squad for the 2022 World Cup. This preamble is going to be the same for every mediacast we do for players, so those familiar with it can jump ahead to around the 4-minute mark where we begin to talk about the team. Actually, the times for each selection are at the top of the show notes, and for YouTube watchers it includes a timestamp so that you can just click directly to go to that point. For those looking for a quick version of this, you can skip to the end of the mediacast, the last 10 minutes or so, where we summarize the likely starters. And prior to that, with about 20 to 25 minutes remaining, we'll have some discussion on the squad, the main issues with the squad, their club affiliations, some statistics, and an overview of the new injured and outgoing players. So we'll also be editing this mediacast into a shorter version for those who are just looking for an overview. But for those looking for a deeper dive, you've come to the right place. We go through the players and how likely they are to make it to the final squad. We explain why we think so and give information on each player's history and standing with the squad. And the way we do this is first by organizing the players into their designated positions. And we always note that there's a bit of artificiality here since players don't always play in their coded positions. Nevertheless, it's a good way to organize the discussion. And then we go through the players and share some of the data we've collected in our soccer files. And using that data, we try to predict how likely the player is to make the team, based mostly on their recent participation, but a couple of other factors as well. And we categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seems to be off the squad. And we also mention big players who have recently retired and make note of any who are currently injured. And then at the end, we finish with a quick run through of the squad again and try to determine which players will be starters. And for those following on YouTube, we have a very simple graphic where we list the names so you can actually see the players' names. And it's the same broadcast for the audio podcast, so we're going to try to repeat the names a few times to help listeners familiarize themselves so that you know the names of the players who are stepping onto the field and possibly a little bit about them. You can impress your friends by telling them a few details about substitutes coming in and the like. And that's as much as we can do to this point, but as rosters are being published, we're going to do an update episode on teams and players. So for the players, that will essentially be going over our predictions here and updating them based on the games played to that point and any information, any new information we have. And by that time, we will have the final roster so we can say which players were selected. So keep your eye out for those, probably in mid-November, those update podcasts. And now we can move on to talk about Spain. So we've done a couple of podcasts on Spain. We did the Euro 2020 preview, and then we've already published the team media casts for the World Cup here. So Group D is done, and we have a couple of takeaways from those podcasts in terms of the team. So number one, the dynasty period is over for Spain. They won 3 tournaments in a row from 2008 to 12, and that kind of came crashing down with a group stage exit from the 2014 World Cup. And perhaps the last nail in the coffin there was Sergio Ramos not making the 2020 Euro Cup, and indeed no Real Madrid players making that team. So I think a couple of players who were young during that period still remain, but the heart of the team is done. So that leads us to our second point. How have they done going forward? So we'll come back to this at the end, but basically Spain had a fairly ambivalent history prior to 2008, prior to the dynasty. They were a respectable team, but not among the top teams. Generally, they had a ceiling of reaching the quarterfinals of tournaments at best, although they did that regularly enough. The question going forward was, would they be able to rebuild and remain in and around the top teams? And it's still kind of open to debate, and we'll talk about that a bit more at the end. And finally, is the absence of Real Madrid players in the 2020 Euro Cup significant? Now, I do know this was a very sensitive issue in the past, that basically the manager they had tended to favor either Real Madrid or Barcelona, and would choose most of the players from there. I sense that it's not as much of an issue now, and I believe former national team or current national team managers are more fair-minded about it, just trying to choose the best players. But to be honest, I'm not really intimate enough with the Spanish team to know if this is still an issue. But it will be interesting to see how many Real Madrid players make this squad, given that there were none last time around. All right, we'll come back to those issues and a couple more at the end of the podcast. Now let's move on to formations. And this is blissfully easy with Spain, because basically it is always a 4-3-3 formation. But I also use this segment to kind of talk about the games that we're covering during this period in our discussion. So we had the Euro Cup, of course, in the summer of 2021. And there you can see all 6 games. They used a 4-3-3 formation. And the games we'll kind of be looking at in terms of participation during this period begin with the World Cup qualifying. So they had 5 World Cup qualifying games after the Euro 2021. Again, all a 4-3-3 formation. They also had kind of leftovers from the 2021-22 Nations League. Most teams were finished kind of that season, but they topped their group over Germany, who they meet here in the World Cup, actually. And they had to play a semi-final and a final. So they had 2 games there, and it was a 4-3-3 formation in both of those. They also had a couple of friendlies, and they used a 4-3-3 formation in those. And in the Nations League, the more recent season of the Nations League, they have played 4 of the 6 games. They're going to play the last 2 games at the end of September. And it was a 4-3-3 in each of those games they played in June there. So that makes it 13 games that they've played since the Euro Cup. So we'll mostly be judging who we think is going to make the team based on participation in those 13 games, as well as a couple of other factors that we'll take into account. All right, let's move on to the player-by-player section of the podcast. And we will take a look at the manager. Well, the manager is Luis Enrich. And we'll talk a bit more about him, but just to fill in a little history, Vincent Del Bosque was the manager who kind of led them through most of their glory period from 2010 onwards anyway, and he went all the way to the Euro 2016 Cup as the manager. After that, Julian Lopetegui came in as the manager and actually led them through qualification for the 2018 World Cup. However, just before the World Cup began, they replaced him with Fernando Hierro, a veteran of Spain's team who played from 1989 to 2002, and he actually led them through the 2018 World Cup, where they reached the round of 16, and that was a disappointing result and a disappointing exit too. They were expected to beat Russia in that round of 16 game, but it went to a penalty shootout and they lost there. So Fernando Hierro stepped down after the tournament, a very short stint there, since he had started just 2 days before the tournament began. And Luis Enrich came in. So from 2018, he's been their manager. Actually, there was a bit of bother for a few months where he actually left the team, I think, for 4 months and then came back. But we'll just say, for the sake of simplicity, he's been there since 2018, and he led them through the Euro Cup in 2020. He was kind of accused of favouring Barcelona, who he has a history with, because there were no Real Madrid players in the squad, but nevertheless. So he actually did coach or manage Barcelona before 2018, from 2014 to 17, and then was with managing Celta de Vigo and Roma in Italy in 2010 and 12. He was with Barcelona before that. As a player too, he was with Barcelona from 1996 to 2004, but to complicate matters, he also played for Real Madrid from 1991 to 1996. So we won't go into too much detail on that, but he was on the national team from 1991 to 2002, and he earned 62 caps and scored 12 goals in his time. So Luis Enrique, the manager of Spain, and I don't think that'll change before, but given the 2018 World Cup, you never know. All right, let's move on to goalkeepers, and we'll begin just by naming the candidates and their likelihood. So Unai Simon is a definite candidate, as is Robert Sanchez. And we have a likely candidate in David Raya, and a possible but unlikely candidate in David De Gea, as well as Arnau Tenas. And finally, we have Kepa Arrizabalaga seemingly off the squad. So I'll tell you what's been going on with them that makes us categorize them that way. So let's go back to Unai Simon. And he started 12 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and was on the bench for one other. So Unai Simon actually just started with Spain in 2020, but has 27 caps and 0 goals. And as you can see, is the starting keeper there at 25 years old. So he plays for Athletic Bilbao in Spain. And has, basically been with fairly small clubs there. But he was the starter in the Euro 2020 tournament, and he actually saved 2 penalties in their Game 5 winning penalty shootout over Switzerland. So saving Fabian Schär and Manuel Aquini's penalties there. I think I'm going too deep down the rabbit hole here. So Unai Emery, young, but firmly established as a starter here. We also have Robert Sanchez as a definite candidate, even though he didn't start any of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup. He was subbed in for 1, and he was on the bench for 10, so consistently on the bench, just 2 games that he was not called up for. And he's very new to the team since 2021, and he has just that 1 cap as a substitute, and is also 25 years old, like Unai Simon. He plays for Brighton in England since 2018, and was actually loaned to some fairly small English clubs there, so he's risen up quite quickly too. He also was on the roster for the Euro 2020 Cup, but he didn't see any action. Simon starting all the games there. So both of them, Euro 2020, their first tournament. But even less experienced is our likely candidate, David Raya. He got his first cap in March 2022, and he started one of the remaining 6 games till June 2022, and he was on the bench for 5 others. So having been called up in March, he's consistently been called up since. So 1 cap since 2022, his first, and he's actually a bit older than the others at 27 years old. He plays in England also for Brentford. That's since 2019. And He was with Blackburn before that, and actually with Blackburn's youth club, so spent most of his soccer career in England, although he was with a youth club in Spain before moving to Blackburn. Now, some may be surprised to hear David De Gea as a possible but unlikely candidate, but in fact, he didn't start any of their 13 games since the Euro Cup in 2021, and he was on the bench for the first 7, but then not called up for the last 6 matches. So the manager seemed to favour David Raya towards the end of the period that we're looking at. So David De Gea played for Spain from 2014 to 2020 and earned 45 caps in that time, and he's 32 years old now. So he was on the team actually for the he was considered for the 2010 World Cup. Actually, he was selected for the preliminary squad and didn't make the final cut. Same in 2012 for the Euro Cup. So his first tournament was 2014, where he was on the bench, Iker Casillas, the starting keeper there, and actually Pepe Reina ahead of him too. But for the 2016 Euro Cup onwards, he was the starter, or I should say 2016 Euro and 2018 World Cup. But as we saw for the Euro 2020, he wasn't the starter. However, he was there on the bench there. So kind of drifting off the team, David De Gea, although he still is the starting keeper for Manchester United in England and has been so for the last 10 years, since 2011. He was with Atletico Madrid for a couple of years before that. And also with Atletico's Madrid youth club too. Okay, we also have a possible but unlikely candidate in Arnaud Tenis. So Arnaud Tenis got his first appearance on the bench in March 2022 and didn't start any of their remaining 5 games, but was on the bench for one of them and with the under-21 team for 2 and not selected for 2. So made a brief appearance, so I won't go into detail. He may come into the picture in the future. He's just 21 years old and right now playing for Barcelona B in Spain. So probably this tournament coming a bit too soon for him, but we may see him down the road. Finally, we have Kepa Arrizabalaga, and he last appeared for Spain on the bench in November 2020. So he played for Spain from 2017 to 2020 and earned 11 caps in that time. He's only 28 years old. He plays for Chelsea in England since 2018. He's not the starting keeper for them, though. Mendy from Senegal is. Before Chelsea, he played for Atletico Bilbao from 2015 to 2018 and was with some other clubs, but he was with Athletic Bilbao's youth club. Sorry, I said Atletico Bilbao, but it's Athletic Bilbao, with their youth club from 2004, from 10 years old. In terms of tournaments, he was on the roster for the 2018 World Cup, but he was backup keeper, probably the 3rd string keeper there, and has never played a tournament game. He wasn't selected for the 2020 Euro Cup, so kind of been off the team for a while, but young enough that we might see him in the future. Okay, so that is the goalkeepers candidates, and we'll finish with a summary of the goalkeeper saga. And it's very simple. It's been Unai Simon in all games except for a single friendly, the friendly against Albania, where David Raya started, and he was subbed out for one game. So Unai Simon apparently holding down the starting position there. Let's move on to defenders. And we'll start with the central defender role, and we have the following candidates here. So Pau Torres we have as a definite, and Eric Garcia as a likely, and Emerick Laporte. A bit of an injury concern with him, which we'll talk about, but we have him as a likely. And we also have Inigo Martinez as likely. We have Diego Llorente as possible, and we have Raul Albiol as seemingly off the squad, along with Sergio Ramos, seemingly off the squad. So let's go back to the top and talk about Pau Torres. So he started 5 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, but he was also on the bench for 5, and it was actually the first 3 matches that he was not selected for. So the last 10 matches called up, and he's been with Spain since 2019 and has 21 caps and 1 goal, and is 25 years old. He plays for Villarreal in Spain, and basically has been with those apart from a short loan spell to Malaga. He was with their youth club, Villarreal's youth club, since 5 years of age, from 2002. So Pau Torres, he was his first tournament was the 2020 Euro Cup, where he started about half of the games and subbed into half of the games there. And yeah, okay, so Pau Torres, central defender, a definite candidate. We have Eric Garcia, who played 6 of their 13 games since the Euro Cup. He was on the bench for 4 others and injured for 2, so just 1 match that he wasn't called up for. And Eric Garcia has been with the team just since 2020, 18 caps and no goals. He is only 21 years old and plays for Barcelona in Spain. He was actually with Manchester City in England, both their senior team and the youth club towards the end of his youth. He was with Barcelona's youth club since 2008, from 7 years old. These guys start young. Just moved to Manchester City in the last year of his youth career. Eric Garcia, a likely candidate. Oh, no, I didn't give his tournament history. So he was part of the Euro 2020 squad. He started games 3, 4, and 6. So basically, he and Pau Torres kind of exchanged starts there. Okay, next is Aymeric Laporte, and we would probably have him as the definite candidate, except for a bit of an injury concern, which may not be a concern at all, but we'll talk about it. Aymeric Laporte is, okay, he started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he was on the bench for 1 and not selected for the last 4 matches. And that may have had something to do with his injury, because he's kind of been struggling with injury for a while and actually had knee surgery over the summer. So he is recovering from knee surgery. Now, I do believe he's expected to return before the World Cup, actually in September, I think I read. He was actually born in France, and he came up through France's youth system, was a bit of a star in that system, and but always injuries kind of interfered with his career. So I know he was called up for some French games for Euro 2020 qualifying, and I think he actually might have been on the bench for some, but he didn't play any. And then he got injured. So shortly before the Euro 2020 Cup, Spain, I guess, processed the papers or made it possible for him to play for Spain. So he was with Spain's squad for Euro 2020, and he started and finished all 6 games in that tournament. So now he's a Spanish player and is a likely candidate for this cup, but that mostly depends on fitness. If his fitness is good, he's probably a definite candidate. Okay, let's move on to Inigo Martinez, our last likely candidate. So he started 4 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he was on the bench for 6. But he was injured for 2 and not selected for just 1 match there. So he's been around for a long time, since 2013, but he only has 19 caps and 1 goal. He's 31 years old. He plays for Athletic Bilbao in Spain since 2018 and was with Real Sociedad in Spain for a long time before that, from 2011 to 2018. However, he never made a tournament, and in fact was off the team for a 3-year period Actually off the team for 2 spells, 3 years and 2 years, but came back. But anyway, has never made a tournament, and it's this one is his most likely, um, having enjoyed a longer stint with Spain, Spain call-ups recently. Okay, we move on to Diego Llorente. So he started 2 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup. He was on the bench for 3 others, but he was not selected for 8 matches, including the last 7. So kind of drifting off the team towards the end there. He's been with Spain since 2016, but only has 10 caps there. He's 29 years old. He plays for Leeds United in England since 2020, and he was with Real Sociedad before that, and with Real Madrid before that. So he actually was with Real Madrid's youth club, even though he was loaned out to a couple of teams there, with their youth club from 2002 to 2012. And even with a couple of youth clubs before that. So he was selected for Euro 2020, but he was just on the bench there, and in fact not even on the bench for Game 3 there. He received a red card in qualifying, Spain's only red card in qualifying for that tournament. So Diego Llorente, a possible candidate here. And given that they probably will bring 5 or 6 central defenders, he does have a reasonably good chance, although they have been using some players from other positions in their central defense. Let's talk about the player who seems to be off the team. So Raul Albiol actually returned after a 22-month absence, so almost 2 years absence, but returned in September 21. Not starting any of their 13 games there, but he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1. However, he was not selected for the last 10 matches there, so we have him as seemingly off the team. And he's a real veteran. He's been with Spain since 2007 and has 58 caps, no goals though, and is probably aging out here at 37 years old. But he's still playing club soccer for Villarreal in Spain, and prior to that he played for Napoli, Real Madrid and Valencia. So a pretty good resume for this players. And similarly in terms of tournaments, never really was a starter in tournaments. His first one was Euro 2008, and he was started a B team game in that tournament. I won't go through all the tournaments, but the only one he started in was the Confederations Cup in 2009, and even there he only started half of the games. But he was on the roster for World Cup 2010 and 14, as well as Euro Cup 2012 and the 2013 Confederations Cup. However, after the 2014 World Cup, he hasn't managed to reach a tournament since there. So a bit of a surprise to see him coming back in, but he just kind of seems like he just kind of popped up his head there and is not really a candidate. Finally, we have Sergio Ramos. Sergio Ramos last appeared for the national team in March 2021, so shortly before the Euro Cup. And he has such a long history with Spain, it would take a long time to go through. But let me put it this way, he has 180 caps since 2005. So his first tournament was the World Cup in 2006, and he was basically integral to all the tournaments up to 2018 World Cup, where he was the captain. However, despite scoring 4 goals in Euro 2020 qualifying, making him one of their 3 top scorers there, he wasn't selected for Euro 2020, and that was kind of a combination of struggling with injury and then not playing with his club team that much. But again, as I mentioned, that kind of brought out some controversy in Spain, because he was probably the most likely Real Madrid player And when he wasn't selected, that meant no Real Madrid players were selected. So Sergio Ramos. So yeah, seems to be off the team there. So let's summarize this position, and it's a bit complex. As you can see, none of the players have played more than half of the games. All of them have played less than half, or started less than half the games. So in the European Cup, it was Pau Torres and Emerick Laporte in games 1, 2, and 5. And then Eric Garcia replaced Pau Torres for three of those games. In World Cup qualifying, it started with Garcia and Laporte. And again, Inigo Martinez and Pau Torres kind of came in and out of that position alongside Laporte. Laporte was in the Nations League final games, those two Nations League final games there, and he was accompanied by Garcia in one and Torres in the other. So always the same set of characters, with Hugo Guillamon making an appearance in one of the two friendlies. For the Nations League games in June, Laporte was out with injury by then, so it was Pau Torres and Diego Llorente in two of the games, and then Eric Garcia and Inigo Martinez in two of the others. So it seems very kind of uncertain who the defense will be. It does seem to be Emerick Laporte when he's available, and then a rotation of Eric Garcia, Pau Torres, Inigo Martinez, and Diego Llorente. So who knows what we'll get in the cup, but I suspect that if Laporte is healthy, he would be first on the team sheet, with one of the others probably rotating in, because Spain seems to prefer rotation in most positions as opposed to one firm starter, although we saw with goalkeepers they tend to go with the same starter. But we'll talk about that more at the end. Let's move on to talking about left backs. So we have a definite candidate in Jordi Alba, and a likely candidate in Marcos Alonso, and a possible candidate in Jose Luis Gaya, and possible, maybe a bit less possible, but in Sergio Reguilon. For YouTube watchers, if you're following the graphics, if their name is in black, it means they've played in a tournament, and if it's in grey, it means they have not played in a tournament. Let's go back and look at the veteran Jordi Alba, who started 5 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 4. So just 2 games that he wasn't selected for. Jordi Alba has been with Spain since 2011 and has 86 caps and 9 goals. And he is currently 33 years old. And he's been with Barcelona for 10 years now. And in fact, that's his second stint with Barcelona, so since 2012, and was with Valencia before that, and finished his kind of youth club career with Valencia in 2007. However, in his early years, he was with Barcelona's youth club from 9 years old. 9 years old for 7 years there. So Jordi Alba's first tournament was the 2012 Euro Cup, where he started all games, and he continued to start all tournaments all the way up to the Euro 2020. And as we see, he still seems to be starting, but not as much as all that, just 5 of the 13 games. Nevertheless, we consider him a definite candidate, even if he's not the starter. Marcos Alonso actually returned from a 3-year absence in October 2021 to start 5 of their remaining 10 games up until June 2022, and additionally subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 2. So just 2 games that he wasn't selected for, just like Jordi Alba. So they really seem to be kind of sharing the position. Marcos Alonso has been with Spain since 2018, but only has, only has 9 caps and is 32 years old. So he's actually, no, I'll give his club history first before his tournament history. He's with Barcelona in Spain now. That's a recent move in 2022 from Chelsea, where he was with, who he was with from 2016 to 22. Prior to that, he's played for a few teams, Fiorentina in Italy, Bolton in England, and Real Madrid in Spain for a short time, although he was with Real Madrid's youth club there. But he's never made a tournament. I mentioned that he was off the team for a 3-year period there. So really not a consideration for the 2018 World Cup. That was a bit right at the beginning of his time, but also not a consideration for the Euro 2020. But now he has come into good consideration. We consider him a likely candidate. Jose Luis Gaya, or Gaia, had started 2 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup. He was on the bench for 2 and injured for 2, but not selected for 7 matches, including the last 6 matches. So drifting off the team, it seems. He's been with Spain, Jose Luis Gaya, since 2018 and has 18 caps and 3 goals in that time and is 27 years old. He has also been with a team for 10 years, Valencia since 2012. And his entire youth club club experience was also with Valencia. So joined the team in 2018, but didn't make the 2018 World Cup, but did make the 2022 Euro Cup, where he appeared only in Game 4, which he actually started, but he was subbed out at towards the end of the game, and that was his only appearance there. Okay, yeah, that is Jose Luis Gaya, a possible candidate here. Sergio Reguilon is a bit of an injury concern. He hasn't really kind of made it on with the team, just as he didn't really seem to make it on to Tottenham, or make Tottenham a permanent place for himself. But I'll just say he started 1 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he was on the bench for 2. But if there was any hope of him reaching the squad, the injury for the last 4 games in June seems to be interfering with it. So he's got 6 caps since his first one in 2020 and is 26 years old. At one point, he looked like a good candidate. He seemed to be doing well with his club team, Tottenham in England, who he's been with since 2020. But then kind of fell off, and now he's on loan to Atletico Madrid since 2022. But I don't think he's played any games for them yet, because he has a groin muscle injury since May and has an unknown return date. We'll cover that in injury. So Sergio Reguilon maybe more possible, but unlikely, really. Okay, let's summarize the left-back position. So it was Jordi Alba in the Euro Cup, except for Game 3, where Jose Gaya replaced him. And as far as World Cup qualification goes, Jordi Alba played the first and last qualification games, but Jose Gaya played games 2 and 3, and Sergio Reguilon played game 4. When it came to the Nations League final games, it was Marcos Alonso in the position, and Alba returned to play one of those 2 friendlies before the Nations League 2022-23 games got underway in June. And in that case, Alonso played 2 and Alba played 2. So it seems to be mostly Alba and Alonso sharing the position, but Jose Gaya and to a lesser degree Reguilon throwing their hat in. That is the left-back position. We'll move on to right-backs here. For candidates, we have Cesar Azpilicueta as a definite candidate, and Dani Carvajal as a likely candidate. And we have Pedro Porro as a possible but unlikely candidate. So 3 candidates here. Let's begin with Cesar Azpilicueta. He started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup and was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2 others. And he has been with Spain since 2013 and has 41 caps and 1 goal and is currently 33 years old. So he plays for Chelsea in England, also for 10 years since 2012. And he was with Marseille in France before that, and with Osasuna before that, and actually with Osasuna's youth club. Also from 10 years old. So Cesar Azpilicueta saw his first tournament in 2013 Confederation Cup. He was actually on the preliminary squad for the 2010 World Cup, but didn't make the final cut. And basically ranged from being a starter, but was more often on the bench for tournaments. The only one where he was a regular starter was the 2014 World Cup. But otherwise, he has basically been a bench player. In Euro 2020, he started on the bench for games 1 and 2, but then gained a starting position for the remaining 4 games there. And, really since then has seemed to make a bid for the starting position, a strong bid for the starting position. We also have Dani Carvajal challenging for that starting position, though. He returned after a 14-month absence due to a string of injuries, returned in November 2021 to start 4 of their remaining 8 games and was on the bench for the other 4. So once he overcame his injuries, he was consistently called up. Dani Carvajal has been with Spain since 2014, and he has 29 caps and no goals, and he is 30 years old. He plays for Real Madrid in Spain, which, if you've been keeping track, means that he didn't play in the Euro 2020 Cup, but we'll get to that. Also for 10 years, so we have a lot of players coming up on their 10th year anniversary for Spain. Actually, he has been with Real Madrid since 2013, but it is his second stint. So he was with them really since 2010, but he spent a year with Bayer Leverkusen in Germany. So he was with their youth club from 10 years old, Real Madrid's youth club. However, his first tournament was the 2018 World Cup. He was on the preliminary roster for the 2014 World Cup and didn't make the squad. An injury kept him out for the 2016 Euro Cup. So it was the 2018 World Cup that he was actually on the bench for in game 1, but gained the starting position for games 2 and 3 there. However, for the 2020 Euro Cup, I believe it was injuries getting in the way there. He was fit, but hadn't sufficiently recovered from injuries, so really not a consideration. So, but has come back from those injuries over the last basically since November 2021. Finally, we have Pedro Porro, who is a possible but unlikely candidate. He returned after a 7-month absence in October 2021, so he missed the Euro Cup, and but was not selected for the last 4 matches. Not selected for the first 3 matches and the last 4 matches after the Euro Cup. So all that adds up to 1 cap, which was in 2021. But he is young at 23 years old, so we may see him in the future. Currently plays for Sporting Lisbon in Portugal since 2022, but was with Manchester City in England since 2000, from 2019 to 2022, but loaned out to Sporting Lisbon for most of that time. So he looks like he could be an up-and-comer, but is really not carving a place on the Spanish team yet. So let's take a look at some notes. And I made a mistake earlier saying players from other positions were playing in central defence, but actually that's not true. However, it is true that players from other positions play right back sometimes. So central midfielder Marcos Llorente played the first two games of the Euro Cup. And as we saw, Azpilicueta was brought in from then. Azpilicueta went on to play games 1, 2, and 5 of World Cup qualification, but Llorente and Carvajal played one game each. Azpilicueta also played the Nations League final games and one of the two friendlies, and it was Carvajal for the other friendly, and then each of them played two games in the June Nations League games. So it seems like they're sharing the position, especially recently. Azpilicueta seemed to have a reasonably good hold on it, but recently it's been kind of shared between Azpilicueta and Carvajal. And interestingly, central midfielder Marcos Llorente coming in early in the period we're talking about. Okay, that brings us to the end of right backs. On to midfielders then. So keep in mind that Spain typically or always has a 4-3-3 formation. So the central midfielder is usually either a defensive or a central midfielder. They don't really have left and right midfielders or players designated so. So it's often those central or defensive midfielders who will play in the outside roles, the right midfielder and left midfielder. And sometimes maybe an attacking midfielder or a winger will play in those positions. But we'll focus on the centre first and begin with the defensive midfielders. So we have Sergi Busquets as a definite candidate, and Rodri as also a definite candidate, and Hugo Guillamon as a possible candidate. Those are the three that we have as defensive midfielders. So let's begin with Sergi Busquets. He started 7 of 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, subbed in for 3 and was on the bench for 1, and 2 matches there that he wasn't selected for. He has been with Spain since 2009 and has a whopping 139 caps, just 2 goals, so not much of a scorer, but he's 34 years old. And he has been with Barcelona in Spain since 2008. Basically spent his whole career at Barcelona because he was with their youth club in the last couple of years of his youth career. So he's been part of tournaments since the 2009 Confederations Cup. He wasn't a starter there, but he did start games 3 and 5. By the time the 2010 World Cup came around, though, he was a starter, and he was in all tournaments up until 2018 World Cup. So in 2020, though, he was the captain, but he wasn't on the games for on the bench for games 1 and 2 because he had to self-isolate due to COVID. But once he came back, he once again resumed a starting position, and so a real firm presence on the squad. Sergi Busquets. Also a definite candidate is Rodri. He started 6 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup. One of those was as a left midfielder, otherwise in the centre. He subbed in for 2 games and was on the bench for 5 others, so was always called up. Rodri has been with Spain since 2018 and has 34 caps and 1 goal in that time. He's 26 years old, and he plays for Manchester City in England since 2019. He was with Atletico Madrid actually twice in his career, once with their youth club and once with their senior club in 2018 and 19, and was with Villarreal in Spain before that, also ending his youth club time with Villarreal's youth club, moving over from Atletico Madrid. He was not selected for the 2018 World Cup, Rodri, but he did start the Euro 2020 Started games 1 and 2 while Busquets was in isolation there, and then Busquets came back in and resumed the starting position. So Rodri, not necessarily a starter. We'll take a look at how this position has shaped up, but a definite candidate to make the squad. Just a possible candidate is Hugo Guillamon. So he earned his first cap in June 2021 and started one of their 13 games since the Euro Cup and was on the bench for one. He spent a lot of his time with the under-21 team because he's, 22 now, but 21 there. So actually, when he wasn't away with the under-21 team, there were just 4 matches that he wasn't selected for. So Hugo Guillamon has been with Spain since 2021 and has 3 caps and 1 goal. So the 22-year-old is with Valencia in Spain for his whole career, actually. Valencia B team and Valencia Youth Club from 9 years old. Okay, we will actually cover centre midfielders before summarizing the position. So let's go to the list of names there. And we have Carlos Soler as a definite candidate, and Gavi as a definite candidate, and Marcos Llorente, who we sometimes saw as a right back, as a likely candidate, and Sergi Roberto. We have him as possible, but he is a bit of an injury concern. Mikel Moreno is possible but unlikely. Sorry, that's Marino. And Fabian Ruiz also possible but unlikely. And finally, we have Thiago Alcantara as seemingly off the squad. So we'll take a look at these players. Carlos Soler is first. And he's actually new to Spain. He got his first cap in September 2021, but he started 7 of their remaining 13 games up until June 2022 and subbed in for 2 and was on the bench for 2. The only games he actually wasn't called up for was 2 games where he was injured. So 11 caps since his first one in 2021 and 3 goals besides, and he's 25 years old. He plays for Paris Saint-Germain in France. That's a recent move in 2022, having played in Valencia from 2016 to 2022. So he was with Valencia, again, their B team and their youth team since 2005. So he is actually with a youth team before that from 2001. So he got his start at 4 years of age. Okay, well, the only tournament he's been available for would be this up-and-coming one. So never played in a tournament before this, even though he is 25 years old. Next, we talk about Gavi. Gavi got his first cap in October 2021 and started 8 of their remaining 10 games, subbing in for the 2 others. So that's why we have him as definite, because he's always called up since his first time. In 2021, he has 12 caps and 1 goal and is very young at 18 years old. So really doing well for himself there. He's with Barcelona in Spain, graduating from the youth club of Barcelona in 2021, and he was with actually Real Betis youth club prior to that from 2013 to 15. Again, he too has just joined the team, so no tournament experience under his belt. And I'll just add that he actually played left midfield more than centre midfield there. And by the way, Carlos Soler a bit more flexible there, playing left and right midfield, which we'll talk about when we summarize those positions. We have Marcos Llorente. He started 4 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. So 2 games he was injured and 2 games not selected. Marcos Llorente has been with the team since 2020 and has 17 caps and 0 goals in that time. He's 27 years old, so a bit of a latecomer to the squad. And he plays for Atletico Madrid in Spain, Marcos Llorente, and was with Real Madrid in Spain from 2015 to 19. So he also came up through the Real Madrid youth system, but was with a couple of youth teams before joining Real Madrid at 13 years old. Marcos Llorente was part of the squad actually for the Euro Cup. He started and finished games 1 and 2, playing in a right back position there. And then, well, I'd say lost his starting position, but he was replaced, probably just filling in there in the right back position. I think it was for Azpilicueta. So a good goal line clearance in that tournament against Sweden, by the way. So Marcos Llorente, a likely candidate to make the squad. Sergi Roberto, we initially had as a possible candidate because he, despite not starting any of their 13 games since the Euro Cup, he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. And but he's really been plagued by injuries. So he had actually 4 separate injuries for 11 of the games, and that included the last 8 matches. So just struggling with injury, and I wonder if he has been for his whole career, because he's been with Spain since 2016, but only has 11 caps and 1 goal. He's 29 or 30 years old. He's been with Barcelona for a long, long time, since 2010, so his whole career pretty much, and but has not made it to a tournament. So Sergi Roberto, again, injuries seem to have played a role there, and we have him as a possible but unlikely candidate. Oh no, we have him as a possible candidate, but maybe his injuries make me think he's unlikely. Mikel Merino also has 11 caps. We'll get to that, but I'll just tell you his recent history. He didn't start any of the 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, but he was subbed in for 5 games, but he wasn't selected for 8 of them, including the last 6. So he got his first cap in 2020 and actually got 11 caps and 0 goals. So was making his way into the team for a while, but seems to have dropped off. He's Mikel Merino is 26 years old and plays for Real Sociedad in Spain since 2018. He was briefly with Newcastle in England before that, but he hasn't made it to any tournament yet. I believe he was no, I was going to say he was a consideration for the 2020 Euro Cup, because he did play 6 of their 11 games in the lead up to that, but actually not selected for the squad. So Mikel Merino, possible but unlikely, mostly due to missing the last 6 matches. Fabian Ruiz last appeared for the national team for the 2021 Euro Cup. So he was on the team just briefly from 2019 to 21, but earned 15 caps and 1 goal in that time. He's, 26 years old, so there is a chance of a comeback. And he actually recently moved to a big club, Paris Saint-Germain, in France since 2022. He was with Napoli before that and Real Betis prior to that. That was his youth club too. So he made it to the 2022 Euro Cup, but he was just a substitute. He subbed into games 1, 2, and 4 there. And as I said, looked like he was making it onto the team, but has not been selected since then. Finally, we have Thiago Alcantara, and he last appeared for the national team in the Euro Cup also. So he's just 30 years old, so there is a chance of him making a comeback onto the team, although he's never really kind of carved out a place for himself on the squad. Let me tell you, he was with Spain from 2011 to 21, and he had 46 caps and 2 goals. And he's still playing for Liverpool in England and was with Bayern Munich for a long time before that. and actually with Barcelona from 2009 to 13. So he has a good pedigree, but tournament-wise didn't really kind of make the team. His first cap, as I said, was in 2011. And he was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2014 World Cup, but was injured. And in all the cups after that, he was on the squad, but only as a substitute. He subbed into basically a couple of games in each tournament, the Euro 2016 and 20 and the World Cup 2018, but never managed to get on the squad. And he hasn't appeared since the 2020 Euro Cup there in 2021. So Thiago Alcantara seemingly off the team, although there is a chance for a surprise there. Let's take a look then at the central midfield position. So as I've said, it's always a 4-3-3. So just one central midfielder right in the middle. And in the first two games of European qualifying, it was Rodri, and then Busquets came back from COVID isolation to finish the tournament, playing the next four games. Those two, Rodri and Busquets, alternated the position in World Cup qualifying. And in the Nations League final games, it was Rodri and actually Koke moving into the position once. It was Busquets in the Nations League final games, important games there, but Rodri and Koke in the friendlies following that. And once again in the Nations League games in June, it was Busquets and Rodri alternating again. So a good chance that they'll do that in the Cup as well. But I think Busquets has a slight edge there if there is to be a consistent starter. Okay, we move on to left midfielders now. And as we said, there's actually very few candidates for left and right midfield. So we'll talk about the position after we introduce the candidates that are here. And just for left midfielder, there's only one player classified, and it's Marc Cucurella, classified as a left midfielder, and he seems to be off the squad. So that's it for left midfield candidates, and I might as well talk about right midfield at the same time, because we only have one candidate too there, and it's Brais Mendes in the possible but unlikely category. So just one player per position in the possible, no, just one of them in possible but unlikely. Let's go back to Marc Cucurella, and we'll see why he is seemingly off the squad. He first appeared on the bench in November 2021 and started one of their games, but he was with the under-21 team for 4 of the games and not selected for the last 8 matches. So he's quite young, 24 years old, with just that one cap in 2021. He's with Chelsea in England, and maybe we'll see more of him in the future, but he doesn't look like a candidate for this cup. The right midfielder, Brais Mendes, earned his first cap with a substitute appearance in November 18, way back then, and then was absent from the team for almost 3 years, and came back. Didn't start any of their 13 games since the Euro Cup, but was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. However, he was injured for 2 and then not selected for the last 6 matches. So also doesn't look like a strong candidate to make the cup. So let's just describe the position, because in the 4-3-3, one would think that there's several left midfielders and right midfielders to fill the position. But in fact, it's players from other positions that seem to do so. So for the left midfielder, it was attacking midfielder Pedri playing the role in the Euro Cup. And then in World Cup qualifying, Koke in games 1, Solar in games 2, 3, and 5, and Gavi in game 4. So all of those getting a turn. Solar getting 3 games there. In Nations League finals, it was Koke and Rodri, who we've met as a central midfielder already. And then for the Nations League playing, it was Gavi and Koke, each playing left midfielder twice. So it does seem to be mostly Gavi and Koke here in the position. Koke is also an attacking midfielder, so we'll meet him shortly after. But Solar also has kind of a bid, having played most of the World Cup qualifying games there, although not playing it since. For right midfielder, Koke switches sides and plays over there, so he did that all the way through the Euro Cup. And some of the same names are coming up here. Solar and Marcos Llorente, Koke twice, and then Gavi once in the World Cup qualifying games. The position kind of seemed to fall more on Gavi for the Nations League final games and the first friendly, but then Marcos Llorente came into the picture for the second friendly. So very confusing here. In the 4 Nations League games, it was Solar and then Gavi and then Llorente and then Solar. So the position really seems kind of open, or, you know, a rotation among those 3 players for the most part. Solar, Gavi and Llorente. Probably Solar and Gavi looking like in the position now, but Koke did play it in the Euro Cup, so he kind of got his hat in the ring there too. Ooh, kind of confusing, but that brings us to the end of midfielders, because we have a bit of a format change here for Spain, because they always have a 4-3-3. The attacking 3 will have a left forward and a right forward. And those are usually played by left wingers or attacking midfielders, or perhaps a forward. So we've put left wingers in the section of forwards here, and we're going to start with that. So for left wingers, we have Mikel Oyarzabal as a possible but unlikely candidate, and that's as a possible candidate, and we have Brian Gill as a possible but unlikely candidate. So not a lot of candidates here. The position probably played by an attacking midfielder or a forward. But let's take a look at Mikel Oyarzabal. So he started 2 of their 13 games in the since the 2021 Euro Cup, but he was out with 2 separate injuries for the last 8 games, and also not selected for the first 3 matches. So just 2 starts for him there. He's actually an injury risk then, and may come back. Actually, he is expected back mid-October, so may make it back into the team and become more than a possible candidate here, but we'll see. Just a little detail on Mikel Oyarzabal. So he's been with the team since 2016. He has 21 caps and 6 goals and is 25 years old. He plays for Real Sociedad in Spain, and actually has for his whole career coming through their youth system. Played for a couple of youth teams before that, but a Real Sociedad guy. So he was selected for the Euro 2020, despite his first cap being in 2016. He was absent from the team after his first cap for 3 years, came back in 2019 and made it to the Euro Cup squad, where he was a substitute, coming in actually for the first 5 games there as a substitute, and he went on to start game 6 as a matter of fact, and he scored the 9th and winning penalty in the game 5 shootout against Switzerland. So Mikel Oyarzabal, a possible candidate right now, but an injury risk. Brian Gill is new to the Spanish squad since 2021. He started none of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, but he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1. But he was with the under-21 team for most of those games, so perhaps a candidate for the future. Brian Gill has 4 caps since 2021, and is 21 years old, and 21, the number that defines him, I guess, because he's been with Tottenham in England since 2021, but is currently on loan to Spain. So I think he's more of a candidate for the future, but possible, but unlikely here. So let's talk about the left wing position again. If you think of the 4-3-3 formation, there is no left wing, there's a left forward. So that's usually played by attacking midfielder Sarabia, who we'll get to soon, or by forward Dani Olmo, although many have stepped in for a game or two. In the Euro Cup, Dani Olmo played games 1 and 2 in this position, and forward Gerard Moreno played game 3, and it was Sarabia in games 4 and 5, and even right winger Ferran Torres in game 6. So a lot of different players playing in the position. Different players actually in all 5 games of World Cup qualifying. Moreno, Sarabia, Fornals, De Thomas, and Dani Olmo. And then Oyarzabal, who we met here, did play in one of the Nations League final games, and then Sarabia. So really all over the place here. Sarabia and Olmo in the friendlies there. So it looks like Sarabia and Olmo are kind of the 2 main candidates for this position, although a lot have kind of been tried out. Okay, let's move on to right wingers, and players coded that way are Ferran Torres, who we consider a definite candidate, and Yeremy Pino, who we consider a possible candidate, and Adama Traore, who seems to be off the squad. So let's go back and talk about Ferran Torres. He started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he subbed in for 3 besides. He was injured for the other 2. So always called up, Ferran Torres. He's been on the team just since 2020, but has 30 caps and 13 goals since that time. He's 22 years old. So he recently moved to Barcelona in Spain since 2022, and was with Manchester City in England before that, from 2020 to 2022. Prior to that, he was with Valencia in Spain and actually came up through Valencia's youth system. So his first tournament was the Euro 2020, where he was a starter, and he started 4 of the games and subbed into 2 of them. Besides, he got 2 of their 13 goals in that tournament. So all signs that he's becoming an important player for Spain here. And the second candidate is Yeremy Pino. So he is actually an injury risk. He first appeared upon the bench in June 2021 and started just 1 of their games since the 2021 Euro Cup, but he was subbed in for 3. He's young and was with the under-21 team also for 3 of them. But most significantly, he was injured for the last 4 games and not selected for 2 besides. So Yeremy Pino, been with Spain since 2021. He has 6 caps and 1 goal and is 19 years old. No, 20 years old, sorry. He plays with Villarreal in Spain since 2020, and that's been his club, his youth club also. So Yeremy Pino, a bit of an injury doubt. He has an ankle injury which he picked up in June, but that sounds like something he might get over by the time the World Cup comes around. But we'll see in September whether he finds his way back into the squad. Finally, Adama Traore. He didn't start any of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, but he was subbed in for 2 of the first 3, and he was on the bench for 1. However, he was not selected for the last 10 matches. So the very muscular Adama Traore has been with Spain since 2020, and he has 8 caps and no goals, and is 26 years old. He plays for Wolverhampton in England, and has actually been with Middlesbrough and Aston Villa in England too, and was with Barcelona in Spain. He came up through their youth system, Adama Traore, but seemingly off the squad, although kind of a fun player to watch there. In terms of tournaments, he actually was on the squad for the Euro 2020 Cup, but he appeared only in Game 3, where he was subbed in with about 10 minutes left or so. So very speedy, but not really a candidate for Spain. So, as with the left wing, the position is always a right forward in that 4-3-3 formation. However, the position is more consistent on the left with Ferran Torres, the main man, and attacking midfielder Sarabia often replacing on the right side here. So Ferran Torres in 3 of their Euro Cup games, and Gerard Moreno played a couple of games there, and Oyarzabal, despite being called a left winger, switched over for the last game of Euro Cup qualifying. So Torin played the first 4 of their 5 games in World Cup qualifying, and Sarabia for the last 2. So sorry, that should have been 4 of 6. And Ferran Torres again in the Nations League final and in the first friendly. And Jeremy Pino got 1 start in those friendlies. And in their Nations League games in June, it was Ferran Torres twice, Sarabia once, and newcomer Asensio in the last game. So a bit more consistently Ferran Torres, but here we also see several other players taking up the position. It'll be interesting to see who takes it in the friendlies. My suspicion is it's more of a rotated position rather than one held down by a single player. Okay, moving on to attacking midfielders, we begin with Koke as a definite candidate. And Pablo Sarabia, who we've mentioned a couple of times as the left and right forward. We have him as a definite candidate. He plays even played centre forward once, so he roves around a bit. We have Pedri as a likely candidate. And we have Marco Asensio. We just saw him as the right forward in the last game of June there. And we have him as a possible candidate. Pablo Fornells, possible but unlikely. Brahim Diaz, also possible but unlikely. And finally, Sergio Canals, seemingly off the squad. So quite a few players to talk about there. So let's begin with Koke. And Koke started 7 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 3. So always called up, which is why we have him as a definite candidate. He actually played as a central midfielder in a friendly, so playing a bit back there. And we saw him playing left midfielder several times also. So tends to be a bit more defensive in this 4-3-3 setup. He's been with Spain. Koke has been with Spain since 2013, and he has 67 caps and 0 goals. So again, a hint that he's a more defensive minded player. He's 29 years old. Koke plays for Atletico Madrid and has done so since 2009. In fact, he's always been with Atletico Madrid since 8 years old. His first tournament was the 2014 World Cup, but he had trouble becoming a starter. He was just on the bench in that game, apart from a B team game in Game 3, where he started and finished. Euro 2016, also a bench player, coming in for 1 game. But in 2018 World Cup, he started 2 of their games. And in Euro 2002 started all 6. So kind of more firmly establishing himself in the starting lineup as time goes on. Koke there, a definite candidate. Pablo Sarabia, we've seen kind of all over the field or all over the attacking end of the field as a left forward and a right forward. almost equally in those positions, and he even played, as I said, as a forward once. He started 9 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he was subbed in for all 4 others, so a definite candidate for us here. Pablo Sarabia has been with the team since 2019, and he has 24 caps and 9 goals and is 29 years old. So he's with Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2019, although he was loaned out to Sporting Lisbon in Portugal for 2021-22. That loan spell has ended, though. Before Paris Saint-Germain, he was with Sevilla in France and Getafe in Spain. Sorry, Sevilla in Spain and Getafe, and was with Real Madrid. Prior to that, he was with Real Madrid's youth club too, and then briefly at the start of his senior career, but he quickly moved on to Getafe there. His first tournament was the 2020 Euro Cup. Pablo Sarabia, he subbed into games 1 and 2, and then gained a starting position after that, and scored 2 of their 13 goals in the tournament there. Pablo Sarabia, yeah, a definite candidate. Pedri is a likely candidate, except that he does have an injury kind of a tag on him. He was injured for the last 4 matches. Sorry, I'll start at the beginning there of his participation during the recent period. He started just 1 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup and was subbed in for 1 and out with 8. Out for 8 games with the same hamstring injury 2 separate times, actually, so including the last 4 games. So a little bit up in the air, but he does seem to be over it now. I think he might have played for his club recently, so perhaps not an issue. Pedri has been with Spain since 2021 and has 14 caps and 0 goals. He's 20 years old, and he plays for Barcelona in Spain and was with Las Palmas in Spain before that, and their youth club at the end of his youth there also. So 2020 Euro Cup was his first tournament, but he was a starter playing as the left midfielder there. And if you recall, he did score a shocking own goal, sending a back pass to the keeper from around 40 yards out. And the pass was a bit too firm, but really it was the goalkeeper's mistake. He mistrapped it and it went in the net. But nevertheless, Pedri gained good reputation from the tournament. He was named to the team of the tournament there and is quite popular among Spanish fans. So Pedri, attacking midfielder, a likely candidate, but also a bit of an injury tag on him, which we'll address in the update episode, as well as repeat at the end of the podcast here. We have also Marco Asensio. So he returned after a 19-month absence in June 2022 to start 2 of their remaining 4 games and was subbed in for the other 2. So making a quick comeback here, Marco Asensio. He's been with Spain since 2016 and has 30 caps and 1 goal and is 26 years old. So he plays for Real Madrid in Spain and has done so since 2014, although he's been loaned out to several teams there. And he was part of the 2018 World Cup squad as a substitute. He came into games 2 and 3 there. However, he wasn't selected for the Euro 2020. He was kind of off the team for a period there, but has recently made a comeback and is now a possible candidate. Always a bit difficult to tell when they just kind of come in for the last few games in the period we're looking at. So we'll keep an eye on him. Pablo Fornals is a possible but unlikely candidate. And sorry, give me a second to organize myself here. He returned after an almost 3-year absence himself. That was in September 2021 to start one of their remaining 13 games, and he was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. However, he kind of went as quickly as he came and wasn't selected for the last 7 matches. So he's been with Spain since 2016, but only has 6 caps and 1 goal in that time. But there is still time for him since he's 26 years old, so has a few years to try to work his way into the squad. He plays for West Ham in England since 2019 and was with Villarreal before that. So no tournaments despite being on the team since 2016, and frankly, not likely to reach this tournament either. Brahim Diaz is in the same category of possible but unlikely. He earned his first cap with a start in June 2021. That was just before the Euro Cup, but didn't start any of their 13 games after it, just on the bench for 2 games and not selected for 11 matches, including the last 6. So Brahim Diaz, just 1 cap since 2021, but he's very young at 23 years old and plays for Real Madrid in Spain. So time for him to work his way into the Spanish squad. And working his way out of the Spanish squad is Sergio Canals. He last appeared for the team in March 2021 and was just on the team from 2019 to 2021 with 10 caps and 1 goal. He didn't make Euro 2020, plays for Real Betis in Spain, and not seemingly in the picture here. So a lot of candidates there, so I'll kind of describe the attacking midfielder position. And again, if you envision a 4-3-3 formation, there really is no attacking midfielder. So players coded this way may play in the midfield, as Koke does, kind of in the more defensive end of the field, or they may play as one of the outside forwards, as Sarabia does, on both sides. There. Okay, so now we move on to the actual forwards, because we don't have any secondary strikers to talk about. So these would be the centre forward position, and the candidates are Alvaro Morata as a definite candidate, Dani Olmo as a likely candidate, Raul de Thomas as a possible candidate, Rodrigo Moreno as as a possible but unlikely candidate, and it's Gerard Moreno, who we've mentioned, as seemingly off the squad, and Abel Ruiz also seemingly off the squad. So let's talk about the definite candidate, Alvaro Morata. He started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup, and he was subbed in for 2 besides, and injured for 2 as well. Alvaro Morata has been with Spain since 2014 and has 57 caps, but an impressive 27 goals, so almost 50% scoring ratio there. And he's 29 years old. He plays for Atletico Madrid, actually his 3rd spell with Atletico Madrid since 2020. And besides that, he was loaned to Juventus for a 2nd time from 2020 to 2022. So he did a spell also in Chelsea and was with Real Madrid for 2 spells also. So really kind of comes and goes on teams quite a bit. Alvaro Morata's first tournament was the 2016 Euro Cup, where he was a starter and he scored 3 of their 5 goals in that cup. However, he wasn't selected for the 2018 World Cup. It shows how fleeting form can be, because despite his great form in Euro 2016, he had a poor season with Chelsea and was not selected for this cup, despite scoring 5 of their goals and being the top scorer for Spain in qualifying. However, he seemed to return to form enough to impress the manager to select him for the Euro 2020, where he was a starter in all games except Game 6, where he subbed in. And he scored 3 of their 13 goals in that tournament. So Alvaro Morata, a definite candidate coming into this tournament. Okay, let's go on to Dani Olmo. But I do believe he has an injury tag on him too, picked up just recently in early September. Nevertheless, we have him as a likely candidate. We'll talk about it at the end, but I think he'll be back in time for the Cup. Dani Olmo started 4 of their 13 games since the 2021 Euro Cup. He was subbed in for 4 and injured for 2 and not selected for the first 3 matches. So whatever injury he has seems to have come after those June games. Dani Olmo has been with Spain since 2019 and has 24 caps and 4 goals and is 24 years old. So he plays for Leipzig in Germany since 2020 and has kind of been around, actually. Dinamo Zagreb in Croatia from 2015 to 20 and actually with their youth club. So kind of interestingly moved over to a youth club in Croatia from Barcelona's youth club, where he played from 2007 to 2014. In terms of tournaments, Dani Olmo was his first tournament was the Euro 2020, where he started 3 of the 6 games and subbed into 2 of the others. Sorry, I'm getting a bit mixed up. He actually missed a penalty in the Game 6 shootout against Italy, but he scored the winning penalty in the shootout in the previous game against Switzerland. So one of the more noticeable players, actually, of the 2020 Euro Cup, and a likely candidate here, and we'll talk a bit about his injury later, although it doesn't seem like it will keep him out. We do have a player probably being kept out, though, in Raul de Thomas. So we have him as a possible candidate, but actually he's listed as ineligible. And I kind of looked into that. I don't think it has anything to do with him being eligible for the Dominican Republic, interestingly, but has more to do with an odd club move in September, which left him unable to play for his club. So he moved, I think, from Espanyol to Rayo Vallecano, but he signed that contract after the transfer period was over, so is not allowed to play for them until January. I don't see why that would prevent him from playing for the national team. So I don't think it's ineligible, rather than he won't be seeing any field time. So perhaps the manager thinks that his fitness won't be good enough for the Cup. We'll try to clarify that in the update podcast. Anyway, Raul de Thomas got his first cap in November 2021 and started 3 of their remaining 8 games and was subbed in for 1, but not selected for 4 matches, including the last 2. So that gives him 4 caps since 2021, and he's 27 years old. But for some reason, again, for the reasons I just described, looks like he's not going to be considered for the Cup. Okay, Rodrigo Moreno. We saw him mentioned, actually. Sorry, we didn't. Rodrigo, he's better known as. And Rodrigo did not start any of their games since the 2021 Euro Cup, but he was subbed in for 2, but not selected for the other 11, including the last 6 matches. So he's been with Spain since 2014 and has 27 caps and 8 goals and is 31 years old and plays for Leeds United in England. His form has been good this season, so I wonder if he'll come back into the picture, getting off to a good start in the season there. Before Leeds, he was with Valencia from 2015 to 20 and with Benfica for 5 years before that, and kind of came up through Real Madrid youth system. Well, actually, just at the end there, it was really Celta de Vigo's youth system, moving to Real Madrid in the last year of his youth. Rodrigo was born in Brazil, and his first tournament was the 2018 World Cup. He actually, after 2014, his first cap, suffered a 3-year absence from the squad, but was back in time to make it to the 2018 World Cup squad, where he subbed into 3 games, so just as a substitute there. However, despite scoring 4 of their 31 goals in the lead up to Euro 2020, he didn't make the final squad for that one. And as you see, even in this period, has trouble making the squad. So again, perhaps his good form in the early start of the season with Leeds will bring him back into better consideration. Gerard Moreno seems to be off the squad. He last appeared for the national team in September 2021. So he did play after the Euro Cup, but not for long. He has been with Spain since 2019 to 2021. So a very late starter with Spain because he's 29 years old. So his first cap coming in his late 20s, and has 17 caps and 5 goals in that period, and plays for Villarreal in Spain since 2018. He was part of the Euro Cup squad. He started games 2 and 3 there, and lined up as a left forward there, and actually as a right forward in one of the other games too, but didn't score any goals in the tournament, and in fact missed a penalty against Poland there. So really hasn't been part of the squad since that Euro Cup. Abel Ruiz is our final candidate here, and he is seemingly off the squad. He earned his first cap with the start in June 2021, so just before the Euro Cup there, and started one of their 13 games since the Euro Cup, was on the bench for 2, but not selected for the last 10 matches. So it looks like he was kind of considered both before and after the Euro Cup, but wasn't actually selected for the World Cup, so for the 2020 Euro Cup, which was in 2021. And he's just 22 years old, so has time to make it back, and plays for Braga in Portugal, having moved from Barcelona in 2020. Let's now summarize the position of forward. So Alvaro Morata is the main man there. He started the first 5 games of Euro Cup 2022, and Dani Olmo came into the position in Game 6. Morata played 3 of the World Cup qualifying campaign games, and Abel Ruiz and De Thomas each started 1. Attacking midfielder Sarabia and Oyarzabal actually played the position in the Nations League final games there, but it was Morata in both friendlies and in 3 of the 4 Nations League games in June, De Thomas getting 1 start there. So that is the forward position, and that's also the end of the player-by-player section of the podcast. So we're going to move on to a discussion of the squad, and we'll begin by reviewing some of the notes from the beginning of the podcast, so perhaps a bit of repetition here, but I partly do it for those joining us in the short podcast at this point. So some of the notes from the beginning, kind of takeaways from our team podcast, were that the dynasty period for Spain is over. So a great period from 2008 to 2012, finished with a sudden finish with a group stage exit from the 2014 World Cup, and Spain have been wondering about how things go forward from there. So how have they done going forward? Is it a return to a fairly ambivalent history in World Cup and Euro Cup, where the quarterfinals seemed to be their ceiling prior to 2008? They did that regularly enough, but didn't often get past the quarterfinals. So would they be able to rebuild to kind of remain one of the top teams? It's still really open to debate because they were kind of poor after 2014, but then in the 2020 Euro Cup they reached the semi-finals. So again, maybe one of the top teams in Europe will say a semi-final finish, making them one of the top teams, but otherwise their results have fallen off quite a bit since their dynasty period. Finally, is the absence of Real Madrid players in the 2020 Euro Cup significant? Well, certainly the fact that there were no Real Madrid players angered fans of that team. So that actually leads us nicely into the next section where we look at club affiliations. And I'd say about 2/3 of the players play in Spain. And we have 6 players for Barcelona. And we're talking about the players in our definite, likely, and possible categories here. 6 of them with Barcelona and only 2 of them with Real Madrid. So, perhaps there is a bit of an issue there. I got to admit that I'm not intimate enough with Spain to really comment on this. I don't really follow the kind of day-to-day dramas of the team, but more of a broad overview. So you'd probably have to find another podcast to get into the kind of day-to-day gossip and talk about the team. Anyway, we do have 3 players for Atletico Madrid, and then several players, a couple of players for Villarreal and Valencia. So the main teams in Spain, they're all being represented, and Atletico Bilbao, a bit of a smaller team. Inigo Martinez coming from there. Otherwise, about 1/3 of the players kind of play outside of Spain, with actually most of them being in Europe. In England here, a couple with Manchester City, and a couple with Paris Saint-Germain, and otherwise smaller teams. Leipzig is kind of moving up in Germany, but they're not a top team yet, I would say. In England, we have Chelsea, but we also have a couple of smaller clubs like Leeds United, Brentford, and Brighton being represented. So pretty strong club affiliations, and still about 2/3 of the team coming from teams in Spain. Let's look at a couple of statistics that I've been putting together in comparison with the other national teams in the tournament. And for average, for total players under consideration, we have 50 for Spain, with the average being 50.3. So kind of bang on form there. Not too many, not too little. They will have to make a few decisions and cuts along the way, but nothing to really comment on there. For a number of candidates under more serious consideration, that would be definite, likely, and possible candidates, 32. And that's actually a little bit lower. So Spain has kind of stuck with the same players a little bit more than other teams. But again, not a lot to talk about there. It's kind of in range. And then candidates that are definite or likely, so we'd almost be surprised to not see them make the cup, is 23. So if we have to reduce the squad to 26 players, that means they have to basically add 3 players, and that will be from the 32 players probably. So a couple of decisions to make. We also have some injured players that are concerned, so that might change it up a little bit. In terms of average age, Spain's is 26.9. That's within the 25 to 27 range that I've been talking about, but actually is a bit towards the upper end of that range. So we can consider Spain kind of a slightly older team than average, but not really anything of concern. They do have Marcos Llorente, 37 years old, as their oldest player, and they have 9 players who are 30 or older. And at the bottom of the scale, that compares with 6 players who are 22 or younger. And in fact, they have 3 players who are younger than 22. And Pablo Sarabia, a definite candidate, is one of them. So, yeah, again, not really anything to comment on there because it's basically in range. Average number of caps is 27.4. So the average is 27.5. So really nothing to draw from that statistic. Total number of goals was a bit surprising for me, 79. A bit low, to be honest. I thought Spain was kind of a higher scoring team. So let's take a look at that. Total goals per player on average is 2.8, and that is actually lower than the 3.6 average. So again, I'm taken a bit by surprise here by having thought that Spain was a higher scoring team than they seem to be. But let's take a look at the scorers in a bit more detail. And we saw during the play-by-play podcast, actually, that Alvaro Morata has a very good scoring ratio. That's 47%. And Ferran Torres is 43%. So both of those big scorers. Pablo Sarabia with 9 goals in 24 games is at 37%. However, that's a bit of a big drop off after that. Carlos Sora is next with 27%, and everyone else is below 20%, including Dani Olmo and any of the other forwards under consideration. So actually, Jeremy Pino, 1 goal in 6 games, doesn't really count. We need a bit more data to really draw a conclusion there. So again, just in general, a bit less scoring than I thought they would be, but not really an issue of great concern. Let's move to some of the issues for Spain, and one issue in defence is inexperienced backup keepers. So the backup keepers seem to be Sanchez and Rea, and each of them have 1 cap. So I wonder if this could be a reason to actually take David De Gea, since Unai Simon himself only has 27 caps. So he's a bit inexperienced himself, and maybe David De Gea could bring some experience to the bench. We also have Aymeric Laporte's health and fitness. He is due back, I think, at the end of September. So that's kind of an important consideration for Spain to have him back in defence. We do have kind of a rotation of defenders, central defenders there, which we'll talk about when we try to pin down the starters. Alba or Alonso for left back. Again, I'm beginning to suspect that Spain is rotating positions on purpose, kind of having 2 players ready. So it seems for a lot of positions they have 2 players, although it's a bit surprising for goalkeepers that they haven't done the same thing. On the right side, we have the same situation as Piliqueta and Carvajal, seemingly sharing the position. But are they going to land on a consistent starter, or is the philosophy more to have 2 starters kind of rotating in and out? Same situation in central midfield. Busquets and Rodri. Well, actually, they have 2 central midfield positions available, so that is perhaps not down to 1 player. And we saw, especially on the left side of midfield, it's a bit undecided. The formation is very predictable. We saw they have a 4-3-3 all the time. So perhaps Spain adds unpredictability by using different players in positions. And it seems that they, for the right and left midfielders, both in the middle of the field and the left and right forwards rotate players in quite a lot. So it would be difficult to kind of know who's going to be starting. On attack, the issue, Sarabia or Olmo seem to be vying for the left forward position, but again, it could be more of a rotation. But the two positions that they do have fairly consistent starters for is goalkeeper and centre forward. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to pin down the starters or predict the starters when we get to that section. But before we get to that section, let's take a look at some of their new, injured, and absent players. So I'm going to kind of go in order of importance, and what I mean by importance is their likelihood to reach the squad. So definite candidates, Carlos Sola, a central midfielder, is new to the squad and plays for Paris Saint-Germain. Gavi, also a central midfielder playing for Barcelona, new to the squad also. Soler is actually 25 years old, but got his first cap in 2021, whereas Gavi is 18 years old. So both of those new. Goalkeeper David Rea, we'll have him as a likely candidate unless I'm correct in perhaps guessing that De Gea might be brought in for experience. But David Rea plays for Brentford in England. He's 27 years old, so not a young player, but he is new to the squad, getting his first cap in 2022. Inigo Martinez, a central defender who we also consider likely. He's actually 31 years old, but has never made a tournament. I just put him on here because of that. He does have 19 caps since 2013, but in terms of being a serious candidate for the team, he's new. Okay, I probably shouldn't have put him on the list. I'll admit it. Marcos Alonso is also really kind of new to the Spanish squad. Has been on the team since 2018, but hasn't been involved in a tournament. But now that he seems to be getting some starts and is a likely candidate to reach the cup, we can kind of consider him a new consideration. And by the way, for those watching on YouTube, if I have the player's name in light grey, excuse me, sorry, I had to cough there. If I have the player's name in light grey, it means they've never been in a tournament. If it's in black, it means they have been in a tournament. Anyway, Marcos Alonso, a likely candidate who would be new to the tournament experience. Sergio Reguilon, we all have him as possible. So if it's a possible candidate, I'll really just go through the names here. Hugo Guillamon, also a possible candidate. Jeremy Pino, who we're going to talk about in injuries right away here. And Raul de Thomas, although it looks almost certain that he won't be on the squad, even though we had him as a possible candidate. But perhaps look for him on the Spanish team after the World Cup. In terms of injuries, the most concerning one is Aymeric Laporte, but he had knee surgery over the summer and is due back, I believe it's at the end of September. Even if it's a little after that, that seems to give him enough time to recover for the Cup. So they will definitely be hoping so, as he seems to be a starting central defender if he's fit. Sergio Reguilon was injured for the last 4 games. He has a groin muscle injury since May, and even now has an unknown return date. So Sergio Reguilon really never made it into the squad anyway, but if he had any chance of making it into the squad, this injury may undermine that. Sergi Roberto, he's out with a muscle injury problem in mid-September, and I don't think we have a return date for him. But again, he's just a possible candidate, even without the injury. We have Mikel Oyarzabal. This actually is he's more of a starter than the ones we just mentioned. He's out with a cruciate ligament injury since March. However, he is expected back in mid-October. So those September friendlies where we hope to get a bit of an update on the squad will come too soon. And we'll have to see if they have any pre-tournament friendlies that'll give us an indication of whether he's coming back. Jeremy Pino is a right winger, and he's out with an ankle injury in June. But in my most recent look at the injury list, he wasn't on it. So I think he may already be back in action, Jeremy Pino. We also have Pedri. He was out with a hamstring injury in June, but seems to be over it now. Again, he wasn't on the injury list when I last checked it. However, it did leave him out for the last 4 games there in June there. And wow, a long injury list here. We also have Dani Olmo out with a knee injury from early September. However, he is expected to come back in mid-October. So a long injury list, and we're not done yet. The last one is not an injury, but it's Thomas. Raul de Thomas. So we talked about this in the player-by-player, and it seems a bit of a complicated story. But the word is he's just simply won't be selected. He was listed as ineligible, but I don't think it's that. I think it's that he, well, again, I don't want to get into the story, but something to do with a club transfer, and basically he can't play for his club until January, so he would lack the fitness to make the tournament. Anyway, despite that large number of injuries, it seems like most of them will be available, especially the big players there, Laporte, Pedro, Olmo, and Oyarzabal. All of them probably due back before the tournament. Okay, let's take a look at some notable absences. Well, I'm kind of cheating here. David De Gea is actually a possible but unlikely, so he's kind of drifted off the Spanish team in recent times. But I did talk about him perhaps coming back because of his experience, so not really off the team. Sergio Ramos, the defender. I covered him in the player-by-player podcast, but a true veteran for the team. But he is 36 years old now, and he missed the Euro Cup, though that was due to injury, but seems to be off the team now since he hasn't played since before the Euro Cup. Diego Costa. Now we're talking about players really missing from the World Cup 2018, because there are some listeners who kind of follow these national teams from World Cup to World Cup. So even though he and the following players weren't selected for Euro 2020, I'm just pointing them out from the World Cup 2018. So Da Costa not making Euro 2020 either, but he was a starter in the World Cup. Isco is also gone, still playing club soccer, but last appeared for the national team in June 2019. So he was, again, a starter in the World Cup, but didn't make the Euro 2020. Andre Iniesta, a starter in the World Cup, but he had retired by the time the Euro 2020 came around, and one of the key players of that dynasty generation there. And David Silva, also a starter in the World Cup, but had announced his retirement before the Euro 2020. So these are some big names, and we're not done yet. Yes, we are. Okay, that's the end of the notable absent list. So we have one more thing to do, and that is to go through and predict the starters for the Spanish team. And I'm going to actually use yellow, the color yellow, to indicate a kind of a rotation here. So Luis Enrique is the manager and will almost definitely remain manager, although they did fire a manager shortly before a cup in recent times, but I doubt that will happen here. For goalkeeper, we can be quite certain that Unai Simon is the starter. I'll just name the definite and likely candidates. So we have Unai Simon as definite, Robert Sanchez as definite, and David Rea as likely. But Unai Simon, definitely the starter there, as he has started almost all of their games. In defence, it is really a lot of players to deal with. So as a definite candidate, we have Pau Torres, and as likely candidates, we have Eric Garcia, Emerick Laporte, and Inigo Martinez. And there is quite a bit of rotation there, but I'm going to put Emerick Laporte as a definite, because I think if he's healthy, he will be a starter. And this could be controversial, but I'm going to put Pau Torres. Of course, we need two central defenders to start, but I'm going to put Pau Torres, Eric Garcia, and Inigo Martinez as rotating. Although I do think Torres and Garcia are probably the more likely candidates there. For left back, we have a bit of a rotation here. So in the past, it would have been definitely Jordan Alba, but it's been fairly even in recent times. So I'm going to put Jordi Alba and Marcos Alonso as rotating there. Jordi Alba having played in tournaments before, but Marcos Alonso not. For right back, we have the same situation. Cesar Azpilicueta, the definite candidate, and Danny Carvajal, the likely candidate. Both seem to rotate, and to be honest, I've come to believe that Spain is rotating these positions on purpose. So rather than a kind of a firm starter with a backup, they're giving experience to two players by alternating them in games so that they have both available to start. Central midfielders, we have Sergi Busquets. This is defensive midfielders. Sergi Busquets and Rodri as definite candidates, and a 4-3-3. Only one of them can start. So I think I'm gonna guess that it's a rotation of those two players in their 4-3-3 formation. Of course, they could always change formation and go with two central midfielders, but they've used a 4-3-3 all the way now, so I'm kind of working on that basis. I'm going to name the central midfielders here, but actually we see that the actual central midfielders in that 4-3-3 formation are Busquets and Rodri. So the central midfielders will play right or left midfield. Actually gets complicated because some of the wingers and attacking midfielders come back into this position, but we'll try to handle it as best we can. So as definite candidates for players coded as central midfielders, we have Carlos Soler and Gavi, and a likely candidate for Marcos Llorente. But we'll actually talk about the position of left midfielder first. And in that position, it's a real mix, actually, of Soler. So I'm just going to highlight these in yellow as alternate players that may alternate as starters. So Soler and Gavi, and then attacking midfielder Koke coming back to play in this role of left midfielder, and Pedri, who actually played the role in the Euro Cup. So again, I'm beginning to feel that Spain are predictable in their formation, but not predictable in who goes into that formation, and perhaps do that to be unpredictable. So I think any one of those could start, and the four, or some of the four, will actually share the role, different ones starting different games. All four of those could also be on the right midfield, but I'm going to add Marcos Llorente there as someone who might start a game as a right midfielder. But as I say, I think all five of those players could well get starts. Quite complicated, and no less complicated in the left forward role. So we'll actually, for Spain, because of the 4-3-3, we put left wingers and right wingers into the forward category, because they generally will play left forward or right forward. And for left wingers, also kind of a rotation is the best guess we can make. And the three players there are attacking midfielders Pablo Sarabia, and he may start anywhere, left, right, or even as a forward. Same with Dani Olmo, generally on the left, but could start in any of those three forward positions. And if he's fit, Mikel Oyarzabal. So, I can't really pin it down to a starter. However, I'm going to be bold on the right side, on the right wing, and say Terran Flores is a starter there. Again, he may start in a different position in that forward line, but he's been fairly steady as the starting right winger. And same for the forward. Alvaro Morata, I'm going to put as the default starter. But we also have Olmo and Sarabia sometimes stepping into that position. So a lot of fluidity in the front line there. So I'll just go through those players again because it was quite confusing. So central midfielders, Carlos Soler, Gavi as definite to make the squad. Marcos Llorente is likely to make the squad. And all three of those as potential starters, probably in a rotation. For left wingers, we have Mikel Oyarzabal as possible, but that's largely because he was a bit of an injury doubt. But I think if he's back, he would be a likely candidate. And for right wingers, we have a definite Ferran Torres and a possible Jeremy Pino, who may show up, but more likely a substitute if he's on the squad. But we put Ferran Torres down as a definite starter on the right wing, or at least in the forward line. For attacking midfielders, we have definite candidates in Koke and Sarabia, and a likely candidate in Pedre. And Koke and Pedre are more in the middle of the midfield, and I think they'll be rotating starters. And Pablo Sarabia, actually, I'm going to put him as a definite to start somewhere. Although where is kind of up to question because he plays any of the positions on the front line. And for forwards, we have Alvaro Morata as a definite and Dani Olmo as a likely, but Dani Olmo more often plays as the left forward, but does play any of those three positions. And so I think he'll be a rotating starter. Whew, that brings us to the end of the predictions, and we will see if we can shed more light on this, but I'm not sure there is more light to be shed if Spain purposely kind of rotates positions, rotates starters, so as to remain a bit unpredictable. So keep in mind that we'll be doing an update as new information comes out. That will probably be in early to mid-November when the rosters are published, and we're going to do the podcast. Once the final rosters are published, we can tell you who made the squad and also give any updates that are relevant, especially on injuries for Spain. Meanwhile, keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. That's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end, and our website at soccerphiles.captivate.fm, and check the show notes. We've been improving the show notes for links to our websites and previous podcast series. We've now made playlists for each series on YouTube. So thank you for listening, and I hope you join us for the next mediacast. Bye bye.